Harihi Gopanandi. From Srila Prabhupada Lamrata. No one would buy his medicine, Prabhupada continued, so he became anxious. Still he tried, and one day a man approached him in his shop and asked if he had any Beecham's powder. And in excitement that someone had asked for his medicine, he died. Similarly, better we spend our whole life and die just to make one person Krishna conscious. That is our line, to become so absorbed in preaching Krishna, whether in Vrindavan or anywhere. We must save all these asuras from destroying the world. In stressing active service and practical results, Srila Prabhupada was exactly following the teaching and example of the spiritual master. According to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, to chant in a secluded place and not preach was a cheating process. Devotional service meant practical work for Krishna. The simple, positive way to control the senses was to engage them fully in the service of Krishna. Active service was the topmost yoga, Prabhupada told Subal, a fact that he had repeatedly explained in his books. In the recently published second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam he had written, here it is clearly mentioned that the inhabitants of Vrindavan were extensively busy in the hard labor of their day's work, and due to the day's hard labor, they were engaged in sound sleep at night. So practically they had little time to devote to meditation or to other paraphernalia of spiritual activities. Factually, they were engaged in the highest spiritual activities only. Everything done by them was spiritualized because everything was dovetailed in the relationship with Lord Sri Krishna. The central point of activities was Krishna, and as such the so-called activities of the material world were saturated with spiritual potency. That is the advantage of the way of Bhakti Yoga. One should discharge one's duty on Lord Krishna's behalf, and all one's actions will be saturated with Krishna thought, the highest pattern of trance in spiritual realization. As far as possible, Prabhupada engaged each disciple in a certain service according to the particular disciple's psychophysical nature. But everyone had to take up some kind of work for Krishna. Since Prabhupada desired to build a temple in Vrindavan, then whoever would help him do it, whether they were trained or not, or whether it was their tendency or not, whoever offered his assistance would become very dear to him and to Lord Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasad Gurudev Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namaste Saraswata Deva Gaurava Prachadane Vishesha Shrinivari Paschatya Deshatane Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Shivasri Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 5, chapter 24, verse 9. Yeshu Maharaj Mayena Maya Vina Nirmata Puro Nana Mani Pravala Praveka Virachata Vichitra Bhavana Prakara Gopura Sabha Chaicha Chatvar Ayatari Bir Nagasura Mituna Paravata Sukha Sarika Kirna Kritrama Nabhumi Bir Vivaresha Gritotamai Samalakratas Chakasati. Translation, my dear King. In the imitation heavens, known as Bila Svarga, there is a great name named Maya Donovan, who is an expert artist and architect. He has constructed many brilliantly decorated cities. There are many wonderful houses, walls, gates, assembly houses, temples, yards, and temple compounds, as well as many hotels, serving as residential quarters for foreigners. The houses where the leaders of these planets are constructed with the most valuable jewels, and they're always crowded with living entities known as nagas and asuras, as well as many pigeons, parrots, and similar birds. All in all, these imitation heavenly cities are most beautifully situated and attractively decorated. The parks and gardens in the artificial heavens surpass in beauty those of the upper heavenly planets. The trees in those gardens embraced by creepers bend with a heavy burden of twigs with fruits and flowers, and therefore they appear extraordinarily beautiful. That beauty could attract anyone and make his mind fully blossom in the pleasure of sense gratification. There are many lakes and reservoirs with clear, transparent water agitated by jumping fish and decorated with many flowers such as lilies, kuvalas, kalaras, and blue and red lotuses. Pairs of chakravakas and many other water birds nest in the lakes and always enjoy in a happy mood, making sweet, pleasing vibrations that are very satisfying and conducive to enjoyment of the senses. Since there is no sunshine in those subterranean planets, time is not divided into days and nights, and consequently fear produced by time does not exist. Many great serpents reside there with gems on their hooves, and the effulgence of these gems dissipates the darkness in all directions. Since the residents of these planets drink and bathe in juices and elixirs made from wonderful herbs, they are freed from all anxieties and physical diseases. They have no experience of gray hair, wrinkles, or invalidity. Their bodily lusters do not fade, their perspiration does not cause a bad smell, and they are not troubled by fatigue or by lack of energy or enthusiasm due to old age. They live very auspiciously and do not fear death from anything but death's established time, which is the effulgence of the Sudarshan Chakra, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purport. This is the defect of material existence. Everything in the subterranean heavens is very nicely arranged. There are well-situated residential quarters, there is pleasing atmosphere, and there are no bodily inconveniences or mental anxieties, but nevertheless, those who live there have to take another birth according to karma. Persons whose minds are dull cannot understand this defect of a materialistic civilization, aiming at material comforts. One may make his living conditions very pleasing for the senses, but despite all favorable conditions, one must in due course of time meet death. The members of demoniac civilization endeavor to make their living conditions very comfortable, but they cannot check death. The influence of the Sudarshan Chakra will not allow their so-called material happiness to endure. So we have a whole description of the subterranean heavenly planets filled with all sorts of pleasurable items, wonderful buildings, wonderful gardens, and wonderful flowers and birds and things. And so it looks very, very attractive. And we see that the people there do not age, they don't get old, they seem to be young all the time. So this looks like an ideal place, and that's why it's called Svarga. But it's also called Bila Svarga, and Bila means a hole. So because it's beneath the earth, the sun does not shine there. So it's completely dark. This also has one advantage because since there's no real day and night caused by the sun, people forget about time passing. Well, in this way they enjoy very nicely. In this description in the 5th canto, we see that the sun is the very center. Vertically, it's in the center. Horizontally, it's in the center of the universe. And it extends its rays upwards, downwards, and horizontally, up to a certain point. And it's within this area that we get on the Dvipas and the Varshas, etc., on Bhumandala, and we get the upper planetary systems, etc. And it's within this range that the living entities get their enjoyment with all the sunlight. After that, there's the big mountain range, the local mountain range, and after that, it goes so high, no sunlight can get past because it's higher than the sun. And then that other part of the universe, which is half the universe, is completely black. There's nothing there, completely devoid of life. So life really exists within that wall, that huge circular wall of local mountain range where the sun shines. And so the living entities take advantage of this, and they're living and dying and whatever within this range. And then we have below the earth, where there is no sunlight. It was described here, the sun was there, and the moon was there, the sun was there, Rahu was there, and then we have the Siddhas and the Charanas and the ghosts and the Rakshasas, we have the Antariksha sphere and the 800 miles going up, and then we have Bhumandala. And after that, no sunshine below that. And yet we have all these layers under the earth where these demons live. But this planet, this universe is such that everybody thinks they're enjoying it. So even though this whole, little bit less than half the universe is composed of the demons in these holes, which means there's plenty of them. As I said, the sun is in the middle, and then there's a short period where there's space there, and then there's the earth, and then all the rest is the demons. So they make up almost half the universe, except for the Govardhan ocean below. But they make a considerable amount of the universe, all these demons down there. And they're all enjoying it, even though there is no sunlight. So, this material universe is constructed in such a way that everybody gets their enjoyment in all sorts of indescribable conditions. From the darkness down on the bottom to the light of the earth area, and then the effulgence of the upper layers of the universe. Unfortunately, everybody dies, as explained in this verse. So whether it is the people down here in the hellish regions that experience the death due to the Sudarshan chakra, or whether they're in upper planetary systems, everybody has to experience this, the death produced by the Sudarshan chakra, the Supreme Lord. So, in other words, whatever happiness we have in the material world is relative, and we can get enjoyment in various places. We have the example of, Indra becomes a pig and enjoys very nicely as a pig. But actually he belongs to an upper planetary system. But he falls into this illusion, and then he becomes a pig, and he enjoys very nicely as a pig. So the living entities adapt to their particular bodies and a particular condition and a particular loka, and then they enjoy. So we should never consider one place better than the other ultimately. Of course, from the descriptive point of view, these are the lowest planets, And then the Svarga and upward are the upper planets. So we would think, well, let's go to the upper planets rather than the lower planets. We see lower planets are just the same. They get more enjoyment, they get better facilities than upper planets, more and more beauty, more everything. So the idea of what is the best place to enjoy is a bit relative, because everybody gets their enjoyment somewhere, no matter where, even if they're in darkness in the lower spheres in Tamagun or whatever. They enjoy very nicely. So, nevertheless, everybody dies also. So, the idea of happiness in the material world is a relative concept. It's relative for human beings, it's relative to other people. I don't get as much enjoyment as that person, so I have to strive to get that enjoyment. Or I don't get enough enjoyment in this country, got to go to that country. And so people go to different countries to get their enjoyment. And then something happens, and they suffer also. So we make all these plans in the material world for greater material enjoyment, and it ultimately has to fail. Of course, due to good karma, we can continue for our life, but ultimately it fails because you die, and then it's finished. So, the intelligent person has to understand this. There are various ways in which we can arrive at this understanding. Material world is rather useless. One is my experience. Birth after birth, we experience this, and sooner or later, hopefully, we get tired of it. And we say, oh, what's the use of all of this? The other method, of course, is to develop one's intelligence birth after birth and end up in Sattva Gun. And when we get to Sattva Gun, we naturally become detached, and we get a little glimpse of the truth in the form of understanding we're not the body, we are the Atma. So even though the material world is a big trap, within that trap of the material world, we have Sattva Gun, which allows us to get out of the material world. So it's a little like secret door. You can get out of the material world even though you're in it, like in the prison. A little secret door is there, you can escape. So if you get to Sattva Gun, there's a little escape door there you can get out of. So that's one built-in escape route produced by the Supreme Lord. So we can't blame the Lord at all. He's given us this place, and because people like it, then they enjoy the prison, whatever, according to their propensities. And the Lord supplies everything there for them, but the condition is they have to be born and they have to die. And then they get shifted from one place to another according to their karma. So it has some inconvenience in it. So here the demons are enjoying very nicely. They have to accept death. They also have to accept that due to their karmas, they may get a worse body, not in Vilasvarga, they may be an animal or a plant. They may be in Patalaloka getting punishment. So everything is mixed for the living entities. And it's not only for the demons. The Devatas fall from their position, come back to earth, or maybe fall lower also. We see King Nirga ended up as a lizard, even though he was doing so many pious activities. So the whole material world actually, though it's planned very nicely by the Supreme Lord, due to the karma of the living entities caused by their own decisions and their own actions, which are subject to mistake, they end up wandering all over the place. They may have a plan, the plans don't work out all the time, and they may suffer, as King Nirga had to do. He had a nice plan of doing pious activities, they end up suffering and becoming a lizard. So, it's a rather uncertain place, this whole material world. And nevertheless, the Lord also gives opportunity for escape by Sattva Gun. So the whole point of this description in the 5th canto of all these different places is to show the great variety of places which are necessary because different jivas have different desires, and in these different places they get their enjoyment. somehow or other, they get some satisfaction out of these different places. Why the different places? Because different people have different natures due to their different karmas and their vasanas. And the whole thing ultimately is useless. So we have in the third canto, Mahavishnu glances over Prakriti and just manifests all of the material elements that form into universes. And then all of this is created within the universe. And then he breathes in, it's all destroyed. So within that 1 second of the Lord, when he breathes in and breathes out, we have these universes and the whole life of Brahma, and all of these living entities going through repeated birth and death throughout the life of Brahma, which is a few seconds for Mahavishnu. So on not only this scale, we see how it is useless because everybody's born and dies and they go up and down in the material world, but the whole planet is useless because everything gets destroyed at the end. The whole structure that Brahma has so nicely created is also destroyed. All the bodies are destroyed. Everything dissolves into Prakriti and becomes invisible. So in this way, the whole manifestation of the Lord is shown to be useless because it's perishable. And of course, it just says this world is perishable. All universes are perishable, and it happens within a few seconds of the Lord's time. So the message we get is we should not become too absorbed in material life, and instead we should strive to get something better than that. Unfortunately, it is very difficult for the human being to understand what to get and how to get it. All of our endeavors for determining our goal and then getting it is material goal and a material means. And we may succeed, we may not succeed, but we keep trying. So to get beyond determining material goals is very difficult for the human being. And that is why the Lord supplies the scriptures to us, so we get higher information. So unless we accept the scriptures, we don't have a clue about what our goal is and how to achieve that goal. So we do have to accept the authority of the scriptures. And when we read the scriptures, we get a clear understanding of the nature of this material world. It will confirm any knowledge we get by experience. It will confirm any speculation we have about the uselessness of the material world. We get confirmation of all that in the Srimad Bhagavatam. And descriptions like this are there to convince us of the temporary nature of the material world. And when we get that information, then we become inspired to do something about it. So then we inquire, what is the goal? And the scripture gives us the goal, and it gives us the means to achieve the goal. So as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, the scriptures actually teach three things: Sambandha, Abhideya, and Prayojana. So Sambandha is the knowledge. As here, we're getting all this knowledge about what constitutes material world, and how the jivas are there, and whatever, how the Supreme Lord is throwing his Sudarshan chakra here, destroying everything. All this is part of the Sambandha, to show us, okay, these are the facts. This is what reality is. This is what real existence is. That's the Sambandha. And then the question is, well, it looks like a pretty hopeless place. What are we supposed to do? What is our goal as a human being? So that's the Prayojana. Now the Prayojana, of course, is different for different people in the scriptures. So we have Svargaloka, get out of the hellish existence, go to Svargaloka, for people who are materialistic. For people who are more advanced, you get liberation. For people who are most fortunate, they go and serve Krishna in the spiritual world. So we get various goals for various persons, but the intelligent person will see the highest goal is the best goal. So that we determine the goal. Once we determine the goal, then we have a means to get to the goal, So to get to Krishna, we have Bhakti Yoga. If you want liberation, we have Jnana Yoga. If you want Svargaloka, we have Karma Yoga. So the scripture is dealing with Sambandha Abhidya Prayojana, and all three topics are necessary. We need knowledge of all three in order to advance the spiritual life. If we don't know what's what, then we have no conviction to do anything. We just sit here in the material world. So we have a lot of the scripture dealing with all what is the material world, how useless it is, etc., and what is matter, what is jiva, who is Supreme Lord, etc. That's necessary. Otherwise, we can't take the next step and understand what our goal is and become convinced of it. So that knowledge is necessary, and that is why we have large sections of the Bhagavatam dedicated to describing this material world, how it's constituted. And this whole section, one canto, is dedicated to describing all the places that the living entities try to enjoy. We need the necessary information. We also need to determine the goal of all of this. Now, of course, we say the goal is Krishna Prema. But then Krishna Prema also is a little bit abstract for us. So it's just a name. So we need some more information about that goal. But because it is spiritual, not material, people will say, well, you can't really describe it because it is spiritual and it's not subject to material words. That is true. And Scripture also says that. The Lord is beyond mind and words and whatever. So you cannot approach it by speculation or by descriptions. However, Scripture is different. It's not normal words. So, Scriptures can describe the ultimate goal. They can describe the Supreme Lord. Why? Because they're not different from the Lord. Of course, I'm going to say, well, how can we understand the Scripture if it's all spiritual or materialistic? Answer is qualification. If you're qualified by a little bhakti, then you can understand. If you don't have any bhakti, no, then you're not qualified. If you have a little bhakti, you can begin to access the spiritual nature of the Scriptures that describe Krishna Prema. So, that Krishna Prema is described when we have descriptions of Krishna performing his various pastimes. And so, particularly, 10th canto is all about Krishna and his pastimes. Of course, the pastimes themselves that consist of Krishna interacting with his devotees. So he's interacting with Mother Yasoda or Nanda Maharaj or the cowherd boys or the gopis. And what is the whole, why all this happens, why there are pastimes, is because there's an experience of bliss and prema for Krishna and for the devotee. So through the pastimes, the description of the pastimes, we can understand to a small degree what is that prema, even though we can't experience it if we're not qualified for it. But by those descriptions, we get some idea. So at least we know which direction to go in. Yeah? And of course, the more we advance in our bhakti, the more understanding we will get of prema itself as we read the scripture. So the scripture is capable of conveying the goal to us. So very important. And once we understand the goal, we get an impetus to attain that goal. If we don't have an impetus for the goal, we won't be very much interested in the practice. So sometimes parents are very enthusiastic and they raise their children and say, oh, you had to be a doctor. And so then, yeah, a doctor, very nice, high position in society, lots of money, whatever, easy life, whatever. And then the child says, I don't want to be a doctor, whatever. And they can describe everything about the doctor. Still, they're not attracted to it. So Another child, of course, they hear about the doctor and whatever, and the parents describe all the advantages. They describe how a doctor is very compassionate, he saves people's lives and whatever like this, and people are grateful to him. So that person then becomes interested in that, being a doctor, and he'll start thinking about it, and then maybe start reading more about it like that, and then he becomes very enthusiastic. So the more he knows about it, with all the details of what a doctor means, it's not just a title, then the more enthusiastic he has to attain that goal and become a doctor. So similarly, the scripture gives us description of the pastimes of the Lord, and through that we understand what prema is. Then we get a little inspiration to attain that goal of being like the devotees in the spiritual world, having similar experiences they have in relation to Krishna. So therefore we get an understanding of the goal. Based on that, we get inspiration to follow the practice, just as the child will be inspired to study because he has an interest in becoming a doctor. So in this way, we have the basic information given to us. We get the goal in the form of Krishna's pastimes with prema, and then we have the method, which is bhakti yoga described in Bhagavatam. And with all that, then we can carry out the practice. So scripture is very necessary to get all that information. And thus we have, in our movement, over many modern movements, great emphasis upon scripture. Of course, we cannot say it's unique to our sampradaya. All the authorized sampradayas have a great emphasis on scripture. All the acharyas write books. And this establishes that particular sampradaya because of the books and the knowledge it presents, which define sambandha, avideya, and prayojana. And modern movements, many spiritual movements, no books at all. No sambandha, no avideya, no prayojana, really. Nothing authoritative. The Lord Chaitanya's movement, though it is supposed to be very spontaneous, and, filled with bhakti, etc., it also has a great stress upon authority of scripture. And that's why we have books like Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita and Chaitanya Charitamrita. Okay, any question there?
The living entities who are residing in these subterranean heavenly planets, have they come from the Earth planet, and after death do they come back to the Earth planet?
Yeah, well, they can get there from various places, just as on Earth planet they may come from Svargaloka, but not all of them come from Svargaloka. Some were previously on the Earth, etc. Some may be advancing from even hellish planets upwards like that. So, and those who are on upper planets, they could come from our sphere, they could come from the Gandharva sphere above the Earth. In some cases, they could come even from lower planetary systems, because not everybody is demonic there. For instance, we have, Prahlad is an Asura family, he comes from an Asura family, he's a devotee. Same with Bali. Bali's down there now even, with Vamanadev on Sutala Loka, but he's a great devotee of the Lord. So the various types of people in various places. And of course, Yamaraj is a great devotee also, he's done a Patala Loka. But anyway, the demons themselves, they obviously there because of a lot of tamagun. But some may be there for a long time because they like it, just as people stay on Earth planet and they just continue Earth. They don't go up, they don't go down. They do enough punya to stay on the Earth, and not enough sin to go down. And these people down there, they're doing activities to keep them in that position, and they're very attached to it, so they stay there also. So they may follow that position, or they may stay in that position, or it could advance from Patala Loka to Sutala Loka, maybe, like that also. So it's various according to their actions and according to their desires and their attachments.
Thank you, Maharaj, for the class. My question is about opulences described for the subterranean is very opulent. So how is it in the Vaikuntha opulences different from these?
Vaikuntha?
Yeah,
Oh. Well, everything here is subject to the destruction of the Sudarshan Chakra and time. So it looks very good, but its constitution is material, which is completely achit, unconscious. And their bodies are also the same, all subject to destruction. Temporary destruction for the lifespan, and then of course the big destruction with the whole universe when it gets destroyed and Mahavishnu breathes in. So it's all in that way destructible. And it is also very different from the Atma, or the Jivas who are there, because matter is one thing and Jiva is different, it's conscious. So even though there's a belief that one is enjoying, ultimately the Jiva is very different from all this matter and all this, what we call enjoyment, whatever, material happiness. So it's very different actually from the Jiva's nature. Spiritual world, from our point of view, looks very similar in one sense, but its constitution is not achit at all. It's not matter. It's spiritual substance, and it's all eternal. It's never destroyed. Here, of course, they think they're indestructible because they don't get old, they don't have diseases or whatever, but they do die ultimately, and the bodies will rot away like everybody's bodies. So in spiritual world, it's all spiritual substance that's just eternal. So nothing decays. They don't have to, take special elixirs and herbs to keep young. Their bodies are naturally spiritual, naturally eternal. They don't get old, they don't die. And those bodies are non-different from the jivas who are there, because jiva spiritual, body is spiritual, it's one. And so those bodies are very natural for them. They're not different from their substance. And of course, everything spiritual is full of bliss, so naturally everything is blissful by nature. They don't have to strive for that bliss at all.
Another one is that about the time thing. That the time in like Ultra it's eternal, but still there are pastimes happening. So how does it work? Is the same day repeats every?
So time. When we usually speak of time or kala, this is an aspect of material world. It is Maya. It is not substance, like Prakriti is substance, but very supple, and it goes into grosser substances like water, and air, and ether, etc. And then we get our visible universe, which is very gross, but it's all matter. There's another part of Maya, which is not matter. So that is time and karma. They don't exist in the spiritual world, they exist in the material world. And of course, time is an invisible force that keeps things moving, and things are created and destroyed within time. So it's an aspect of the material world. So that time can never be there in the spiritual world, that destructive time with past, present, future. But then we will think, well, there's no time there, everybody's just like this. So they're all paralyzed, things like in, we call the diorama. We have pastimes in diorama form, they're just stuck there like picture form like that. But that's also not there. We see they are doing pastimes, and it looks like there is time. So yes, there is a spiritual time. So Krishna gets up every morning and he takes a bath, and Mother Yashoda dresses him and cooks for him and feeds him, and he goes out and feels. So there's a day and a night. How is it different? It's different because that time is subservient to the pastimes of Krishna, and only serves Krishna for his pastimes. So within that day and the night, and whatever in the seasons that follow on one another, it's all at the will of Krishna. So within one day you could have all seasons, for instance, by the will of Krishna for a certain pastime. Time can expand, time can contract. The Rasa Leela lasts for a few hours of the night, but if Krishna wants, he can extend that for a lifetime, a nighttime of Brahma. So Krishna uses time in the spiritual world to facilitate his pastimes. So there is a sense of time, but it's completely not material time at the same time.
One question that I had was, especially around the said that a person who practices devotional service for a longer period of time, they may have the privilege of being born into a family of transcendentalists. So we assume that being the case, that they've accumulated sufficient knowledge, they've done significant amount of devotional service, but then it's seen in their life as a devotee child, teenager, so on and so forth. They may not be so, they may seem to lose interest in bhakti, and just be seem more interested in material activities. So how is that the case that a devotee, after performing so much devotional service, seemingly loses their determination or interest in
You see that devotional service is it's a process, and it goes through different stages, by which we reduce our anarthas. We go through anartha nivritti, we reduce the material tendencies gradually. But just as when we grow a plant, if you're very attentive, then an expert gardener, the plant will grow very nicely. It goes up and predictable, like farmers. We'll see if their crops are growing very nicely, they're good farmers, whatever. But then we have people who don't know how to grow things, a bad gardener or an inattentive gardener, not really interested in it, will find his fields are all messy and things aren't growing, there's weeds there, whatever, all overgrown. And he doesn't get much result from his endeavor, even though he is a gardener or whatever. So in devotional service also, some people are more attentive, they have the proper process, they get the proper knowledge, so they can grow the creeper of bhakti very nicely and it goes up nicely. Other people, maybe not so interested, maybe they don't have the knowledge or whatever, maybe they get influenced and they can upperride, so then the plant doesn't grow nicely. If it stops growing or decreases, this becomes dangerous because the person loses a taste for bhakti, and then he may stop it completely. Just as some people, they do the farming and they say, I'm getting no results, so then they stop. they sell their farm and go off and do something else instead. So, same with devotees. However, as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, nothing is lost. Whatever you've done, somehow that will continue in your next life. It's not exhausted by your lifetimes in this world, whatever bhakti you've done. The only condition there is that if you commit aparadhas, then yes, that can destroy the bhakti or decrease it. But if this we're doing it, but due to negligence, we can't continue, we lose the taste that way, then whatever we've done is with us, is to our credit, next life, and doesn't go to get destroyed in all the different births in the future.
Right. Just a follow-up question on Prabhu's question. With the different stages of bhakti, that we have, is there prescribed duties for each level to progressively move up? So, for example, like, from bhajana kriya, etc., to nishta, ruchi, asakti, etc., is there a step-by-step process in terms of actions that one should perform to
Different actions.
Yeah, like I guess, is it a systematic approach, or is it not a systematic approach, but it's dependent on external factors like mercy, etc.?
So we have these different stages of bhakti which are actually measuring two things. One is the destruction of anarthas, and secondly, more important, is the increase in bhakti. So we start with a bhakti seed, eventually it becomes prema. And in that process, we start with a lot of anarthas, and gradually they go down to nil, zero when we have prema. So we're getting gradual destruction of anarthas, gradual increase of prema to maximum. So basically it's a measurement of bhakti and the destruction of the counter things. So in the different stages, we're actually doing the same bhakti, the same processes, the same watering, except whenever we care for the little plant, we do the same thing when it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and the same conditions help it grow. Yeah? So therefore we do have the same actions of bhakti, hearing, chanting, remembering, and devotee association, etc. all these continue. The only difference will be that how we do them may be slightly different. They don't completely change into something else, but they may be different. Or we may emphasize one type of bhakti over the other as we mature. You know? For instance, if you are doing a bhakti at a certain stage, you may switch to Raganuga, and when you switch to Raganuga bhakti, then the internal sadhana becomes more prominent. So we have remembering, smarana becomes more prominent than it is in Vaidhi bhakti. So that becomes more prominent. So the internal cultivation may take over at a certain point. Even if you're not doing Raganuga, even in Vaidhi bhakti, at a certain point, the internal element also becomes very prominent, because obviously if you get to bhava through Vaidhi bhakti, bhava itself is an experience of the Lord, this daya bhava, which is not external at all, it's a feeling. So therefore the emotional aspect becomes more prominent there, even in Vaidhi bhakti, and it becomes more spontaneous. So there'll be some difference there between that person and a person in the lower stage who may concentrate on the externals more. So in that way we can say that gradually a person, as he advances, may go more internal and emphasize that more. It doesn't mean he rejects the external, because generally the devotees do both, but he may become more absorbed in the internal as he goes higher and higher.
Thank you, Maharaj. Maharaj, also in relation to the spiritual world, and you were mentioning about time, in terms of how time is subservient to the pastimes of the Lord, is there also, like, in terms of activities that we do in this material world, like eating and sleeping, for example, is there such a thing as spiritual eating and spiritual sleeping in the spiritual world for the pastimes of the Lord? Because the soul obviously doesn't need to eat or sleep.
Yeah.
So, but in order for the pastime to happen, there must be some eating and sleeping in terms of the spiritual sense.
Yeah. So in the Upanishad it talks about the qualities of the person in the spiritual world. One of them is there's no hunger, no thirst, like that, no death, etc. So in that sense there's no hunger and thirst, so there was no eating in that sense, that you have to eat to keep your stomach full because if you're uncomfortable, your stomach's not full, or you have to eat because you got to get nourishment, otherwise your body dies. That's not there. Yeah? So we can say that for all the senses. We're using our senses in order to survive in this world. In the spiritual world, that's not necessary. So actually everything is used in relation to Krishna and serving Krishna. So even the eating and the sleeping and the seeing and whatever, somehow it's all related to the service of Krishna and his different pastimes. So in that sense, we can say they're all necessary in one sense because they're intrinsic to the different pastimes. So therefore we see that Krishna gets up in the morning and bathes, and then Mother Yasoda feeds him and he eats. And all the devotees also eat and whatever like that. But this is part of arrangement for their pastimes. So eating is part of their pastimes. And in those pastimes, then they interchange and have different exchanges of, rasa, etc. So the eating and sleeping and whatever is all part of the structure of the pastimes to increase bliss.
And are there spiritual activities that are not seen in this material world that happen in the spiritual world?
Well, of course, in the material world, if we're a devotee, then our activities are considered to be spiritual, hearing, chanting, remembering, whatever. But of course, we have our contaminations in our mind, which weaken the whole process. If one gets to prema, then we can say the influence of material nature is going to be minimized or absent completely. However, we do have a material body, which is also a restriction. So it is said that even if we have prema in the material world, that jiva, who has developed a spiritual body, is limited by the material body to some degree. So he cannot experience the full gamut of higher levels of prema, like pranaya and raga, anuraga, etc. It's very limited with this body, so you cannot experience. So there's some slight difference there. Experience, of course, is probably the basis for just accepting on theory. In previous lifetimes, we had experience, so this lifetime, when we hear about it, then we accept it without having to experience it again. So probably experience is the basis of everything. Unfortunately, experience is also, we can say necessary, but it also, the jiva needs a lot of experience to learn anything. So that's why we get born in the material world, because we don't learn from our experience one time, and we have to repeat it again and again and again in the material world. So we're very slow learners from our experience. So once we do have some experiences and we can absorb it and learn from it, then we don't have to have the experience again. So just by hearing about it, we get the memory of that. This is bad, or I don't like this, or whatever. So then we don't have the experience again. We just go on and we have other experiences that take us to a higher position.
Yeah, I had a couple of detailed questions. So, the first one was based off the pastime where Markandeya Rishi asks to lose your energy, and then in the course of witnessing that, he ends up being part of the university station,
Yeah.
he's floating in the water, and he comes across what is described looks like Krishna the baby. So, and then he gets up and everything's okay, breathed out. That pastime is quite hard to understand. It's a little bit abstract. It's hard to understand whether he's actually having that experience or not. I was wondering if you can maybe explain that pastime, like what's going on.
Yeah. So it's explained as being like a vision. He gets this vision because he wanted such a thing that it's not that it actually happened, it wasn't, but he gets this vision and he actually experiences it as real, that's all. And within that, then he sees the form of Krishna. But then we see that that form is not considered as a separate avatar at all, because it didn't actually appear in the material world, but it was within his vision he saw it. So it's all a vision, the whole thing's a vision, to give him some experience of the temporary nature of the material world.
So from that pastime, we're supposed to understand just the material nature of something.
Yeah.
And the other thing was, in the remind in the prologue, it's described that when Ravana is sort of flying around a lot of planetary systems, he sees the hell's planetary systems and all the Buddhas punishing different living entities, but then as he keeps flying, it seems that there's no like change in location almost. Short distance, he ends up seeing people experiencing vast pleasures, which sounds like that's maybe such a great heavenly planets, but it seems like there's no obvious change in scenery as you would if you're driving from like Auckland to Wellington. Just he's seeing the punishment of living entities, and then all of a sudden he sees everything else. So I was wondering how you make sense of that from a time-space perspective.
Well, of course, people get punished where we have Yamaraj. It's also described in other places that where Yamaraj is actually a very nice place. But the place where next to that is where they get all the punishment or whatever. So he's doing the punishment, but then where he lives is very nice. It's like Swargalok also. So perhaps that's what is right next to the hellish place, the prison. Outside the prison and then inside the prison, so to speak.
You can compare it, perhaps a little bit to some people are living in New Zealand or Hawaii, and other people are living in Iran or Iraq, which is always blown to pieces. It's on the same environment.
We're all in the same world. The same planet, same Bharatvarsha. Different sections.
Maharaj is described in the translation that Mayadana built a beautiful place and there are guest houses. Who are the guests? Who want to go there? That is beautiful, nice.
Well, obviously these places are as big, they're like, each planetary system is big, as wide as Bhumandala.
So you can travel around these places all over the place. It's like we travel over Bhumangala and go to different dvipas and go to different varshas and Bharat etc. So these places also very vast, so then people could travel from one place, even within one loka. But to speak of going from one loka to the next, they could possibly do that.
Like we can travel on the planet, travel on the
Yeah.
Maharaj, I just had a question. We hear the story of Indra when Krishna became king. Prabhupada puts that in the books. I was wondering where that story is actually found.
Yeah, I haven't seen it in any of the scriptures nor in the commentaries also. But probably it's a common story that's told, so that Prabhupada also tells it. But it's a good illustration, obviously, that you're one day in Svargaloka, next day you're not in Svargaloka. You're down somewhere else in the material world, because everybody falls from there eventually, when they exhaust their pious activities anyway. So.
Maharaj, we have 4 questions online if you have time, otherwise, yeah. So, the Bhagavatam describes various hellish planets corresponding to specific sinful actions. If someone performs many different sins, do they undergo multiple punishments in different planets, or do they go to just one?
Yeah. Yeah, so for different sins you get different hellish punishments. Yeah, so yeah, the more different types of sins you do, the more different types of punishment you can get. So some are because of stealing or whatever like that, so then you get that punishment, but then you may kill somebody and you get a different punishment for that. You get all sorts of punishments.
So is it all on one planet, or you could be moving from one planet to
Well,
another
these are
planet?
different, I don't know the one planet or not, but the different sections of the, hellish region.
Since there is law of karma to mete out justice, why are there also hellish planets for punishment?
Yeah, so we get the karma, and then you get a different body, but then there's also people who do extreme activities, so for that they get the hellish punishments. Plus, then after that, then they get their karma. Whatever karmas do with them, they get a body, a different body for that.
In Bhagavatam it says that when the jiva descends to the material world, our first position is Lord Brahma, and from there we degrade further and further to other life forms. But from my understanding, Lord Brahma and the residents on Brahmaloka all get liberated at the end of the cosmic annihilation. So how does a jiva as Lord Brahma become entangled further in the material world, since the post of Lord Brahma can only be taken up by a devotee or the Supreme Lord himself?
It is also said that usually Brahma gets liberated after that and goes to the spiritual world because he's a great devotee of the Lord, and even the residents may go with him like that. So that's found, I think, at one place in the Bhagavatam, maybe 2 places. But I looked in the commentaries, I didn't find any reference there also, so I don't know how it got there and what is the actual explanation. It could be some sort of grammatical editing that happened, and that's how it ended up. Rather than say simply that Brahma is the first living entity, that we progress, from that and go downwards or whatever. I don't know if that was Prabhupada's dictation or not, so it's a little bit contradictory.
Okay. In Krishna book, when Narad Muni is visiting Krishna in his various palaces, it is mentioned that Krishna was engaged in economic development because householders need to increase their financial assets. Could you please explain what that practically refers to? What was his role?
Yeah, well, as Krishna in Dwarka is playing the role of a grihastha and also as a kshatriya, and therefore according to normal duties, then he has certain activities he has to do every day. It's described that he gets up in the morning and he does sacrifices and just meditates, he gives charity, so these are the activities prescribed by Dharma Shastras for a king. So he follows those activities. But, of course, Krishna doesn't got a material body, doesn't have to support himself or whatever. And he's got a spiritual body. All of this he's doing as a pastime. And part of the pastime is to illustrate for other people how a normal grihastha or a normal king or kshatriya should act, that's all. Just as Rama also acts as an ideal king. He doesn't have to act as a king at all because he's a spiritual, but he acts like a king and carries out duties like a king. This is simply to part of his pastime, part to teach people how to act in this material world.
And there is one more last question. In Bhagavatam, we hear all the stories of great personalities, demons, etc., and it seems that they all take place in other loka or planetary systems, but these places are also present on Earth. For example, the pillar that Lord Narasimha appeared is in a place called Abovalam in South India. So did all these pastimes happen in other lokas, or did they all happen on Earth?
It depends. Some of the pastimes are on Earth, some are in other places. And we can't really tell from the descriptions of Bhagavatam where it is, and many doesn't really say, so we don't know. But obviously some are specific, like Vamana is born in Svarga, so it's not on Earth planet at all, it's definitely there. And they can have pastimes in both places, also some of the avatars. So Vamana is there, plus he's also down in Sutla Loka. He has pastimes, he dwells there right now. Of course, he's also the Manvantar avatar, and he stays there for 71 yuga cycles. So the avatars can have various places where they live or where they do pastimes, as well as some are located in one place. Okay.
Okay, that's quick question. I think I read in Bhagavatam that Yamaraj resides in Pluto.
Yeah, Pluto is not a Vedic planet. I think Pluto, in the sense, means Pluto is in the Greek mythology is the Lord of Death. Yeah, so they're basically Yamaraj means Pluto in that sense.
Ki Jai. Ki Jai. Ki Jai. Hari Hari Bol.